Italian Portland is dedicated to raising awareness of Italian culture and its influence in the world through cultural events, education, and service.
Italy never truly leaves our hearts. And now let's hear from Susan Pohl and her unique story, A Full-Time Life in Italy.
If I could start by having you all mute yourselves, just so the audio goes more smoothly for us. My name is Tanya Russo Hamilton, and I'm on the board of directors at Italian Portland, a nonprofit organization in Portland, Oregon. And our mission is dedicated to raising awareness of Italian culture and its influence in the world through cultural events, education, and service. We're very excited to have you all here this evening. A couple of things, as you may have heard, Ontimo will be recording this. So if you would prefer to not have your video on, you are welcome to turn that off now. Thank you for being here. I am going to now turn it over. We're excited about our speaker. I'm going to turn it over to Christina Cavallaro Edic to introduce our speaker this evening.
Okay, thank you, Tanya. And one other thing is, while we are doing the presentation, I will be sharing my screen. And if you have comments about the presentation, feel free to put them in the chat room. And Tanya will be monitoring the chat room throughout. We will also hopefully have enough time at the end to do some Q&A. So you'll be able to actually ask Susan some questions that you may have that may come up during her presentation. So let me introduce her now. I'm really thrilled that she was able to get up at 5 a.m. this morning because she is located in Italy to do this for us. So thank you again, Susan.
Thank you.
To give you a little bit more about her, she is a dual US and Italian citizen. She has a home in Florence, but primarily lives in Umbria, Italy, with her husband, best known as the Stoic One. His given name is Gary, and her precious dog, Luca. She has been seen on an episode of House Hunters International, where she has helped friends fulfill their dream of living in Italy. She has entered her musings in posts on medium.com and Americans in Umbria blogspot. She's also the author of several books, My 5 Stones, a fascinating journey through her life experiences, and an anthology of women's stories is captured in Tales of Our Lives, Fork in the Road. Professionally, Susan Pohl is an executive coach with over 30 years of experience helping people and organizations attain short-term and long-term goals. Her background includes working with senior executives and managers from small private companies to multi-million-dollar publicly traded organizations. Her corporate background includes human resources positions at companies as large as Apple, as well as human resources positions at several startup computer companies. Clients include Apple Computer, Becton Dickinson, Citibank, IBM, Kaiser Permanente, SanDisk, Stanford University, VeriSign, and ID Insight. Susan's pro bono work has included coaching at Catholic Charities, the Federal Correctional Institute for Women in Dublin, California, and the Coaching Fellowship. She's also an executive fellow in leadership coaching at the Miller Center Global Social Benefit Institute at Santa Clara University. She holds a master's degree in educational psychology, a master's in divinity from Pacific School of Religion in Berkeley, and a doctorate in pastoral counseling from San Francisco Theology Seminary. So with all of that, she is here to tell us her story of moving to Italy 7 years ago and living a happy, peaceful life there. So I will now turn it over to Susan. Just let me know, Susan, when you want me to start putting up the your presentation, okay?
Okay. Thank you so much, Christina, and buongiorno a tutti, and from me, buonasera to you. It's very nice to be here with all of you. Christina is a very convincing host to convince me to start so early in the morning. So if I'm a little foggy, excuse me, I have had my cappuccino, but it's still a little early in my body terms. So I wanted to start by saying one of the things I have certainly learned living in Italy is everybody's story here is unique. So I am not putting myself forward as somebody who has the answers at all about life here. I have answers about my life here. So I want to be really clear about that in the very beginning. My perspective is from as an expat who moved from California to Italy. Kind of the time frame that we're looking at, I have, my grandparents are from Italy and my father. My father was also from Italy, from the Cadore area in the Dolomites. So I first came to Italy in 1960 by myself as a child to stay with a family here. And then we made the decision to buy our first apartment in 2010, a little apartment here. And then 2013, we decided to move here full time. And then in 2017, we decided to also then rent another place in Florence. Living in a small town in Italy is lovely, but sometimes, you know, I just missed that extra city energy. So with that, let's begin.
Okay. Okay, hold on 1 second here. Let me get to the, there, can you see? Can everybody see the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. So the first thing to know, it makes me laugh actually looking at this van. So we packed up all of our stuff in Oakland, California, had it put in a container. The container then came, you know, I think to Genoa, and then a moving van moved it to Umbria, which is where I live. The van originally pulled up on our side of the piazza where I live, but unbeknownst to me, there was a huge underground there. So my neighbor came running out saying, you know, move that van or the whole thing is going to go, you know, zoom underneath the piazza. So we were like, oh my God. So that was our first lesson in moving to Italy, is the placement of a huge moving van into an old historic town to be sure that, you know, there is ground underneath you. I know, by the way, it was a woman who got this huge truck into this little piazza. She backed it in and backed it out. We were even all of the Italian men in the piazza applauded her as she backed this thing out. So this was the beginning of our trip. Okay. So once we sold our house in Oakland, the time was right, the real estate market, although it's of course continued to go up. But we sold the house and we sold it in May, and we had a crossing on the Queen Mary in September. That was as soon as we could get reservations to take our dog, which was the main reason we were coming across. And here he is. It was surprisingly emotional for me to be on that ship and look at the Statue of Liberty as we pulled out of New York Harbor. My sister was with me as we made this first crossing, and we both were in tears thinking of how our grandparents had made that reverse trip going to the US with such hope and emotional feelings. And it was really emotionally kind of a goodbye to that part of our American life as we pulled out. The trip was 7 days. We pulled into Southampton, England after 7 days. And as I said, we took the Queen Mary rather than flew because I didn't want to put the dog on a plane. So why Italy? I love this quote by Anna Akhmatova. She's a Russian poet who won the Nobel Prize in 1965. Italy is a dream that keeps returning for the rest of your life. And that was certainly the case for me. I had such a wonderful experience as a 14-year-old coming here for the first time, stayed with a family in Florence who I've still maintained connections with all these years. And it just captivated me, everything. You know, I felt at home in the country. I felt at home with the people, and I wasn't sure about moving here full time, but that's another story. But certainly Italy has a way of seducing people. And I have found that Americans fall in love with Italy and Italians fall in love with America and Americans. Okay. So here, my main reason, and everybody has different reasons and why they make the trip, was my grandparents. This is my nonna and my zio Bruno, who was in the middle, and then my father, who's on the end. There was another brother who died in Italy. Very strange story. My grandmother came to the United States. She had 3 children, boom, boom, boom. So the church said, you need to go back to Italy. That was a form of birth control back then. So they shipped them all back, and then the oldest brother died while he was in Italy. So it ended up just the 2 of them, my grandmother, and then they came back. And so my father always talked fondly about Italy, and they thought it was important for me to come back as a kid. Okay. So this is the thing, you know, about moving to Italy, is that, as I said, it's a country that's very seductive to Americans. It's in many ways the same coin, opposite side. And, you know, Italians always say to me, oh, I love Americans. They're so enthusiastic. They're so relaxed. They're so happy. And I say, they're on vacation. This is why they're so enthusiastic and happy and, you know, have such joy. They're not that way the other 50 weeks of the year. So when thinking about moving to Italy, the big question is it a vacation, or the next slide, is this a full-time life with laundry? So, you know, once we moved here full-time, even having had an apartment here, you know, for 3 years that we came back and forth to, is very different to have a full-time life here. Many things, you know, that one would expect in coming from California, particularly, I mean, any place in the US, you know, to have dryers, to have kitchens installed already, to have air conditioning, were things that had to be negotiated. Dryers are not part of many people's lives in Italy. The cost of utilities here is very high. Dryers draw a huge amount of electricity, which we have found by blowing up circuits constantly. So, you know, you have to think of all of these different things as you move from that American culture where everything is so easy and efficient to an Italian culture. And again, it's very different if you're in Rome or Florence or Milano compared to the country. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was the stages of culture shock and moving to a foreign country. And actually American military has done a lot of work on this because they move people around constantly. So in the beginning, you arrive here and you have so much hope and everything is fun and interesting and exciting. And we talk about adventure a lot. Oh, this is such a great adventure. It was really easy for me to keep my blog up in the beginning. Then there comes a stage where, you realize this is a life that you're developing here. And that's when kind of the uncertainty and doubt comes in. A lot of people in this time period turn kind of on the host country and feel critical, why can't this happen? Why can't that happen? Even though we all came with such great enthusiasm and plans. And so in our case, there were three American couples that all landed in this small town about the same time. And we all went through this stage at different times. And the uncertainty and doubt, and I'll talk about my case, would show up in how inefficient things could be. And in the beginning, I thought, oh, the Italians would be just thrilled to have me tell them how to fix their process so things could be made much easier, right? And no, I mean, there just isn't that mindset. And we would all talk about, why are Italians so resigned? Why can't they fight back against some of this bureaucracy, inefficiency, all of those things? And I guess I realized through this cycle, which happily I'm now in the acceptance, is that there is kind of a fine line between resignation and acceptance. And we all went through this, the adaptations we made to life here. And then finally understanding at a much deeper level than when we first arrived, the positives and the challenges of living in a foreign culture. Okay. So Italy is a big country. If you decide to move to Italy, as we did, the question is, where are you going to move? So Italy is about 3/4 the size of California and has a population of 60 million. And California, which is 3/4 the size, has a population of 40 million. So it gives you kind of an idea of the density, although it's very different depending upon where you are. So the northern countries are the countries, the provinces in the north generally have more money. The central part of the country, Tuscany, Umbria, and Le Marche, Abruzzo, have very different politics historically, and then the southern part of Italy. So it is almost like really looking at 3 different countries. Then Sicily and Sardinia are their own. So the question is, do you want to go to a big city like Venice? Or do you want to go to Florence? Or do you want to go to Rome? Or would you like to live in the countryside? Now, many English people I've met here, and it's interesting, I really didn't have any British friends in California. I mean, not one. In Italy, I've met a lot of English people here, and they really, most of them prefer the countryside. They want to have a space for a garden, they buy these old wrecks of houses and fix them up beautifully. And that is that's a dream for them. And some Americans as well. They get smitten by the idea of under the Tuscan sun and want to buy a place in the country. When we first came, we rented villas out in Umbria, and I knew I didn't want to be out in the country. For me, it was too isolating. Okay. Or do you want to live in a small town? So I live this is the piazza I was talking about with a moving van. In Umbria today, it has a population of 14,000 people. Okay, next slide. We're right on the Tevere, and it's really a lovely town. It's not a tourist town. It's right in the heart of Umbria, and Umbria is right in the heart of Italy. It's probably, Umbrians say it's equidistance from Rome to Milan and from the Adriatic to the Mediterranean. You know, I'm sure if somebody got a calculator, that wouldn't be quite right, but it's pretty much in the center. It's called the Green Heart of Italy. It's also the spiritual heart of Italy. St. Francis is from Umbria. The nativity scenes were developed by, thought of, created by St. Francis. And so throughout Umbria, there are lovely nativity scenes throughout the holiday season. Okay. So the joys of life here. The food in Italy is truly astonishing. You have to really work at getting bad meals. I have talked to American tourists who've come and said, well, I had a terrible meal at XYZ. And I always say, you know, well, tell me, how did you choose the restaurant, or how did you end up there? There was a restaurant we loved outside of Perugia. We were there one day and a huge busload of American tourists came in from Texas. And, you know, we were having our lovely lunch, and I looked over at what they were eating, and it was like a typical American meal. You know, they had this tossed salad to begin with. They had spaghetti, which, you know, we don't really eat spaghetti in Umbria. And I thought, you know, they have an impression of the food from this restaurant, which is certainly not my experience of eating there. So, but if you're here for any length of time, you know, you really learn how to choose places to eat, and the food is phenomenal. Italians really care about the food. And it's not just delicious, but also beautiful. You know, there's this competitiveness often between France and Italy. Well, you know, the Italians say that, you know, Catherine de' Medici taught the French how to cook. I'm not sure the French agree with that, but the people here really care. One of the first performances we went to, we got there, of course, early, you know, or on time, which was early. And everybody behind us was talking away. My husband said to me, what are they talking about? And I said, they're talking about what they just ate. And, you know, generally when I've eavesdropped on people, they're either talking to their mothers, or they're talking about what they ate, or they're talking about what they're going to eat. So food is a huge part of the culture here, and it's delightful. If food isn't of interest to you, you miss a huge part of what life in Italy is about. Okay. Fashion. So, you know, I've had a lot of Americans kind of make fun of how styled Italians are when they go out. Even in my little small town, which is really a country town, people, you know, take care in how they look. They have tennis shoes, they're always clean. You know, their scars are just so. And they have a way of representing themselves when they go out that I find really admirable. They really care about this, even in today's very informal, you know, culture. When you go to Milan or Florence or Rome, and you see people from those cities, they're always dressed really beautifully, and that to me is delightful. Okay. Italian friends. So one of the things that I was, people talked to me about was, oh, it's going to be really hard to make friends in Italy. You know, it's going to be hard to integrate. So that wasn't my experience. Part of it probably was because I started in a small town. I found people really curious about me, like, what are you doing here? And then when I told them, when they asked where I was from, and I said, you know, from San Francisco Bay Area, they would like swoon and go, oh my God, why did you come to Umbria today? And so I found more people wanting to wrap their arms around me and welcome me and integrate. I said I was as integrated in this society as I wanted to be. I mean, you know, at a certain point, you kind of say, you know, that's enough. But now it's different again. You know, speaking from the small town, it's in certain ways a throwback to the 50s, in that the women all do stuff and the men do stuff. So we don't really have that many Italian couples. We do in Florence, but not really in Umbria. You know, my friends here are women, and you know, and then the men get together, play cards in the piazza or whatever. So it's a different way of socializing than what I experienced in the US. Okay. The other thing, of course, about Italy, besides the people and the food, is the art. This is the Penitent Magdalene by Donatello. It's in the Museo d'Opera in Florence. And to me, it's my favorite piece of art in Italy. I could go there and look at that every day. It was carved by him in 1453. It is carved from white poplar. And there's something about this woman that just mesmerizes me. If your taste goes to painting, you've got the Renaissance or architecture. The Italian architecture is very different depending upon what region you're in. And a lot of art historians I met in Florence. Did I just lose? I just lost the screen. Did anybody else? No? Okay.
Screen.
I don't know what happened on my end.
What'd you say that artwork was again?
It's the Penitent Magdalene by Donatello. Okay, I can manage on my own. Okay, so you know, I didn't want to do this presentation and just paint this picture of Italy with no problems. So certainly there are challenges in Italy. Okay, next. So one is the Italian bureaucracy. As I said, you know, people had talked about this, but until you experience it, it's hard to really describe how convoluted some things can be here and how difficult it is to find your pathway through to get things done. So for instance, when we first got here, we were trying to get signed up for the Italian healthcare, which is, by the way, ranked either second or third in the world as far as healthcare systems. And we have all 6 of us who live in Umbria today, Americans, have had great healthcare experience here. Anyway, getting signed up was just unbelievably complicated. And again, this really depends on what community you're in. So the comune or city hall has a big influence on how things get done. Our comune is very, very helpful, very sweet people, but they have this weight of, you know, you go into their office and think, oh my God, is anything computerized? So this drives Americans crazy. It drove me crazy in the beginning. I would say this was my hardest thing to accept, was how things were done. I would go into the community and say, you know, can't you just give me a list of the paperwork that I need to get XYZ done? Well, no, because it changes, and you know, I think this is the list. But then you'd go back and they'd say, no, we need copies of every page of your passport or whatever. Eventually, you know, we just knew it was going to take more time than one would think it would. We have time. So I just kind of let go of it. Yeah, so but that is one of the challenges of being here. Okay, next challenge. Learning Italian. So before many years ago, I used to teach French, and I learned then that some people have an aptitude for language and some people it's just a real struggle for them. If everyone who moves to Italy needs to learn Italian, it's just to me a basic requirement. As a matter of fact, I think now it is they're really pushing this to get to the B1 level, I think, of people who are taking up residency here. And it's easier for some people than others. You know, I've been studying Italian for 50 years and still would not say I'm fluent. You know, I understand everything, but, you know, and I understand the words I don't know. Whereas before I used to think, oh, I know that word, and then I'd miss the next 10 words. So, you know, it does improve, but it takes work, it takes effort. And if it's something that you enjoy, that's great. If it's something that is difficult, I know a lot of people have really struggled with this. So it's something to think about. Okay, next. So another challenge is being far away from friends and family. Before we took that big plunge and moved here full time, we talked to people about what was the main reason people went back to the US. And the number one reason was to be near grandkids. So Gary and I, the Stoic one, and I don't have children, so we don't have grandkids, but we do have nieces and nephews, and we definitely miss them. Now, before COVID, you know, we would go back to the US on a regular basis. They would come here, so I felt connected. But since COVID, it's been particularly difficult. Okay, next. So things that I wish I knew before. Next, the first one is the importance of Italian citizenship. I got my Italian citizenship, but more, I got it as kind of a rite of passage. I don't think I really understood the implications of having it until I got here. It was a lot of work, 3 or 4 years of a bureaucratic hassle in the US, actually. It was strange. The Italian part of the research of getting my documents was very easy for me. My grandparents, as I said, came from the north. They had all the records in the comune there, but getting all the documents done and through the San Francisco office was just a real pain. But it has paid off in that I don't have to deal with the bureaucracy anymore, which makes me very happy. And my husband then is, because he's married to an Italian citizen, also has, I think at this point now, he has like a legal, it's like a legal alien status, or he's not a citizen. His citizenship paperwork is in, but has not come through yet. And because of COVID, it's going to be a while. Okay, next. Okay, difficulty in getting an Italian driver's license. This was a big shock to us. If you come to Italy and you take up residency, you are by law required to have an Italian driver's license within a year. There's no way around it. The only way around it is if you get a driver's license in another EU country, then you can use it in Italy, but you can't use your American driver's license, the international license, etc. So, okay, so getting the Italian driver's license means you have to take a 40-question true and false test, all in Italian, and the Italian is archaic. And the laws are, you know, it's like there's 5,000 potential questions and you get 40 of them. My husband, who's not really facile with language, has been studying for 3 or 4 years. Every morning he takes the test. And he was ready to finally take it. He was taking practice tests. But then COVID hit, and you know, we have to wait till Perugia opens the office again. But if you live in a small town, you need a car, and not having an Italian driver's license is problematic as far as insurance is concerned. Okay, next. So in deciding what community to move to, I was not at all particularly interested in what type of expat community there was. I wanted to come to Italy, have a true Italian experience. I wanted to be integrated into the Italian way of life. And all of that was true. But when push comes to shove, it is the expat community that really understands your life here, or as an expat. At least that has been my experience. People who are married to Italians have a totally different experience. But for an American couple coming here, the expat community is really helpful. It helps you negotiate things that are mysterious to you, that you don't really understand. And sometimes Italians don't really understand even our questions. It's so, the way of life is so ingrained to them that when we ask, well, why XYZ, they don't really have answers, because it's just how things are done. So one of the rules I developed for my husband and me is don't ask why. I mean, if this is the way it's done, asking why just puts you into a rabbit hole that you don't come out of. So having an expat community around you can be really, really helpful, as well as I must say it's also really important to integrate into the Italian community, but it's also very important to have an expat community, and I hadn't thought about that. Okay. So through all of this, what I'm saying is that you really need patience to live here. And, and Italians are both patient and impatient. They are very impatient when they drive, but very patient, like when they stand in line. It always amazes me. They use it kind of as an opportunity to chit chat with each other, and they accept that going to different places, you're going to have to be in line. And they don't get all frustrated, hot and bothered about this or that. So it's learning patience is an important virtue to develop in Italy. Okay, so looking at all of this, is it worth it? All of the things I've said, the lifestyle, the joys, the challenges, and all of that, I guess I would say, well, what do you think? So for me, clearly, it has been worth it. For the three American couples who live here, it's been worth it for all of us. We're all quite embedded here. And when we go, someone asked me, well, don't you miss the US? And I said, I miss some things about the US, but I don't miss the US. When I'm back in the US, I miss Italy. And I guess that's how I have looked at it, that Italy has become my home in an emotional, psychological way. Okay, that's it. And I don't have the...
Oh, can you not see us?
I can't see you. I don't know.
Oh.
Oh, there you are. Okay, I got you.
Okay, well, big round of applause. Susan, that was fabulous. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot, and I know that many that are on this call have learned a lot as well. Tanya has been monitoring the chat room. Perhaps we could address some of the questions that maybe
Sure.
came up.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll just go back through. Thanks, Patrizia, for answering some of those. I don't see you, but I see your name and your answers. Let me go back. One question, from which part of Italy are your nonni from?
So they're from actually it's in the Veneto, but it's the Dolomites. So north of Venice, near Cortina d'Ampezzo is the biggest city that people would know.
Thank you. Let's see here. So I think this maybe was explained by Patrizia, but someone was asking, what is an expat community? Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Okay, good question. You're right. We use these terms, we throw them around so easily. So an expat community would be any foreigners who live in Italy, right? So, and it isn't just Americans. So we have become good friends with a Swedish couple in our building. There's a British couple who lived in Italy for 30 years. So it's people who are not native born Italians.
Okay, yeah, and that helps you form a community. The next question here says, did having Italian grandparents help you obtain citizenship?
Absolutely. Right. I couldn't have gotten my citizenship without them. So they, in Italy, they have juris sanguis, which means, this is how they explained it to me in the Italian consulate office. You have to show that your grandparents never renounced Italian citizenship. So my grandparents were born in Italy. My father was born in the United States, but he was born before my grandparents became American citizens, and that was the key. So what I had to prove was the bloodline and when everybody became citizens.
Okay, yeah, fascinating. You're getting a lot of thank yous. And then, yeah, and then the next question says, Susan, can you say a bit about your decision to also get an apartment in Florence?
Right. So, in the beginning, like I said, we found this little town of Umbria through a villa that we rented in 2000. And we were charmed. It's beautiful. The Niccone Valley to me is the most beautiful valley in Italy, but there'd be a lot of arguments. And so we were just enchanted with this part of the world. And we moved here, and I knew the town was small. The drawbacks of this small town are transportation. So we don't have a major train station. We have a little dinky train station that goes to Perugia, but then Perugia, you've got to get to Foligno, just complicated. So we were really thinking about how we get around from different places. And so we decided to get this place in Florence. So what our pattern had been until this past year, was we would spend the summers and fall in Umbria, and then we would spend the winter and spring in Florence. The winter in Umbria is hard because troppo tranquillo, we say, it's just very, very calm, right? So I missed the city energy, and that's why we did it.
So yeah, you kind of just spoke to this, but someone is asking, how did you choose Umbria today?
Right. As I said, we had rented a place here before, and we knew the area and loved it. I really, in the beginning, wanted, I was like many Americans, I wanted a truly Italian experience. I said, I don't want an American experience transported to Italy. So I didn't want to go to Milano or Rome or Florence in the beginning. And I wouldn't have changed this for anything. I'm really glad we started in a small town. We had exposure to stuff. My friends and family in Florence are like, oh my God, we haven't done that in 50 years. So it has been very charming. And then we missed the bigger city life.
Right. This next question, how hard is it to rent an apartment at first when you don't have any former landlords to give you recommendations?
So it's, again, it's very hard to do this if you're not here. Let me say that. We found our first apartment online. We have been really lucky in real estate dealings in Italy. There's some horror stories. One of the things is to make sure there's only one owner, not a family that owns the apartment. You can get into really complicated things. We found the first apartment in Umbria online, came over, saw it, bought it. Wow. We had decided before, original ideas, we were going to go to every region in Italy and decide which of those. So we started in Ferrara, and I was like, it's not Umbria. I just don't have the same feeling. And we took a train from the north down to Rome. As we went through Umbria, I said, no, this is where I want to live. So we gave up that whole exploration thing, boom, and then just, it was totally an emotional decision.
Wow. Someone is asking, are there recommendations for seeking employment in Italy?
Boy, even before COVID, getting work in Italy is really hard. It's hard for Italians. The unemployment rate is very high here.
Wow.
The work I do is all on computer, either to the US, or I have a lot of clients now in Africa. So finding work in Italy is a real challenge. I would not recommend anybody try to come here and look for work.
Wow. Okay. The next question says, Susan, clearly you are very fluent in French. Did you also consider living in a francophone country? Sorry, you might know that word. Any other countries, I guess is the question.
Yeah, we thought about France, and initially my French was much better than my Italian, but my husband really pushed for Italy. He had been here, seen the family, seen the friends. I just thought the Italians were too were too out of control. I thought, oh God, they're going to drive me crazy. But then we went back to France, and I'm very glad we chose. We decided on Italy. The French are more structured, should we say, but the culture, I think, would be more difficult to integrate into than the Italian culture.
Yeah, interesting. Next question, does your husband have to get his license as well? Or were you the only one required, but he is just wanting it? And what if you live in a city where you plan to walk only?
If you plan to walk only, if you're in Florence, Venice, Rome, wherever, Bologna, there's no need to have a car.
Okay.
Which is the other reason we're kind of thinking about Florence, is because the transportation there is so much easier. I am not getting my driver's license here.
Okay.
My husband is the one who does all the driving. So he, and the thing is, we have been stopped, I think maybe once or twice in road checks. And so far, all he has said is, I'm American, and they go, oh, okay, and wave us through. So, but if there's an accident, I mean, that's the big worry, is if there's an accident, will your insurance cover you? Right. So it's just a little nerve-wracking to not have it.
Yeah. What would you do differently if you could do it over?
Boy, if I could do it over. Well, one of the things everyone said to do, which we didn't do, was to rent a place for a year and then decide where you want to live.
Okay, yeah.
So that's a recommendation. I don't know that I would have done that. It's just not my personality. We were the jump in with both feet, burn the ships, we're going. And so I don't know that we could have been that pragmatic. I do have a good friend from Oakland who moved to Lucca, and they did that. They rented first and then bought, and we're very happy with that method. I think it's a good way to go. I'd recommend it rather than what I did.
That makes sense. Okay, another question about needing a license, but you answered that one. This says, could you talk more about the passport process? And then it goes on to say, I qualify, but not sure where to start. So I'm not sure if this person is saying they're already a dual citizen and need to get a passport, or?
I meant citizenship, not passport, sorry.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Right. So, Britt, where is your consulate? Your Italian consulate, do you know?
San Francisco.
Okay, all right. Lucky you. Okay, so, you go on their website and they will tell you exactly the documents you need. And they more or less do have a checklist. And that, getting the American documents, the apostilles, all of that was my hardest part. It was easier for me. I was lucky. I had a copy of my grandfather's American citizenship papers, which clearly showed he became an American citizen after my father was born. That was the gating item for me.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Julie. I just wanted to say that I do this for a living, like help people with citizenship. I'm also a Italian genealogist, and I'm happy to help anyone. And we went through the consulate in San Francisco, and I would not email them because they won't answer you. I mean, now they just don't answer. If they feel like it's something that's answered on their website about their particular question, they just don't answer you. And so if you want to look at their website, you have all this stuff that telling you what they expect. Now, the way they write it, there's a great deal of room for like, and that's where I can be really helpful because I know what I can help guide you. And I really wish I had somebody to guide me. I think I still have PTSD from trying to do it by myself.
Julie, maybe we could get your information to Christina. And Christina, maybe as a follow-up,
Yeah.
you could
I'll
send
put
that
your
out.
info in there, Julie. Yeah, send it to me.
Okay, perfect, because there's probably a lot of interest there. Yeah. Someone's asking why is citizenship why was that so important? Why is it so important to have that?
Okay, so I think it's a couple of things. It's a peace of mind thing. That's the first thing. So I don't have to worry about getting a visa, am I going to get a permesso di soggiorno, a permesso di carta, all of these different things where you have to interface with the Italian government, which is really frustrating. I think on the prima casa, we don't pay some tax. I mean, there are some financial benefits. But mainly it is the ticket also to the EU. So when we travel, if I travel on my Italian passport, I can go anywhere. I could work anywhere in the EU if I wanted to. And so that's a big benefit. But the biggest benefit for me was not having the hassle. Our friends here who are Americans who aren't Italian citizens, every year they've got to deal with the bureaucracy to renew their visas. And it's just aggravation.
Wow.
So it was like 3 or 4 years of aggravation versus yearly aggravation here.
Right. Someone's asking, did you use a service? You've kind of explained this with your citizenship.
Yeah, I did.
Was it difficult to buy your apartment/home? What is the process?
So it was, we were very lucky. Like I said, I've heard horror stories of people, but we were very lucky. It wasn't difficult at all. It was, you can buy a house in Italy easier than you can buy a car, which is another odd thing. There's a process. The job of a notary in Italy is not what it is in the United States. They're really, to find a good notaio, which we have, is key because they're the ones that check all the paperwork, make sure everything is in order, make sure that you're basically okay. So it's difficult in Italy because there's no multiple listings. So, and I would say most of the property that's for sale in my town is not, you would never know it was for sale. Italians don't generally put up for sale signs. So it's really hard to know. Some of them have things listed online, many of them don't. People recommend going into the local bar and asking, what's for sale. It's not a simple process to find one. Once you find a place and verified ownership made the deal, that part of the process is much easier.
This is Angelo. I just want to say in many of the references that you've been making, one key point that goes back to Italian culture, I think it's the relationship piece.
Right.
So when you go to Italy, as you do the rest of the things to try and explore, research, and get ready, the other thing that you really need to work on is really establishing relationships, trustworthy relationships that you can count on. Because once you establish that trust with that person or that couple, it is forever.
Yeah.
And those relationships are going to help you in the process of going to the comune and get through the bureaucracy, because we are so process oriented in this side of the US or the world, that we try and go with that in first, feeling almost arrogant, like we know how this should work. But then if you actually go through the route of relationships, that person will do the work within their network of relationships, which is much stronger than what you can build.
Right.
So that's actually a very key important point. Sorry if I interjected.
No, I totally agree. As a coach, I used to talk about relationship versus task, right? In the US, the leaders are totally task oriented, like maybe 80% task, 20% relationship. And I said, oh my God, I really want people to be more relationship oriented. Boom, I come to Italy, which is 80% relationship, 20% task. And that you're absolutely right. We were really lucky. We had really strong Italian connections here in Umbria today who, took us through all of the process. So we landed in, we were lucky. We were very, very lucky.
Wow. Let's see. This person is saying, my family is from Foligno, and I have spent time in Perugia. Do you have any recommendations on where I can learn more about life, specifically in Umbria?
One of my good friends, Nancy Hampton, has a blog called Nancy Goes to Italy. I have not kept my blog updated, but Nancy posts, she probably posts twice a week or something. She lives in Umbria today. And I would totally recommend her blog to anybody who's interested. She has much more detailed, if you're interested, and she's got a whole section, so you want to move to Italy, about, all of the more detailed processes.
Okay, yeah.
Susan, if you could send me a link to her blog, I'll put that in our follow-up.
Okay, will do.
Perfect. Okay. Another question about real estate, citizenship. Let's see, citizenship again, and I think we're going to follow up with the connection to Julie there. I guess this person wants to know if you had a lawyer to help you with your citizenship.
No, I did not. I have to say, probably it would have been easier if I would have had someone like Julie to help me through the process. I didn't really even know enough to know there were people out there that did that, so we did it all on our own. We did get a lawyer to buy our first apartment, and that was a total waste of money.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because we really didn't understand the process here. Coming from California, it was so different. We didn't understand the role of the notary and what they did. So, in the beginning, it gave us peace of mind to have paid. And the lawyer was Italian living in England. So, in retrospect, it was really an unnecessary expense, but emotionally important.
Right. I just want to say this real quick. We have 1 minute and there are a lot of questions. I don't know if Antimo or Christina would be able to, or myself, I'm not one of the hosts, but download the questions on the chat, or maybe there's a way we could get them answered in the follow-up, Christina. I might be able to do one more.
Okay. Or can we stay on another 5 minutes or so, Antimo?
Yeah, definitely we can stay on a few more minutes, and also to address the questions about the chat. Once I run the meeting, the recording, I should be able to extrapolate the chat and send that as a file to you.
Okay.
Okay, great. There's like 45 more though. So I'm not sure we'll get through all of that in 5 minutes, but let's go on to the next one. Do you know of any single Americans that have successfully moved to Italy full-time, particularly single older men?
Yes, my good friend Jed has moved, and he's got a website too that talks about it. He now lives in the Veneto. Let me look for the name of his website isn't coming to mind, but he was also, I think, from California, a single man, and moved here.
Okay, great. Maybe we can add his website to the follow-up. Resources. Okay, we're back to citizenship. So I'll skip that one.
One that I actually spotted as they were coming in that I think it's pretty relevant. It might be in a lot of people's mind.
Okay.
But there is always a lot of questions about healthcare. So when you're going to Italy, Susan, can you address the concern that people have about should I have, until I get through the system accepted in Italy, should I have some coverage from America about health coverage? Because some people think that if something happens to you, you may need some sort of coverage to get to care.
Okay, this is a tricky wicket on this question, because that's how it's again one of these Italian things of what the law is, or how things are said to be done, and then what actually happens. So let me just give you a couple of anecdotes of what's happened to me with Americans who've come here. I had an American friend who actually fell in Paris and on her jaw. It was terrible. It was this big, anyway, she couldn't hardly open her mouth when she arrived in Umbria today. I took her to the emergency room. They gave her an x-ray. They were so sympathetic and charged her nothing. I took her to my dentist who said, oh yeah, she has this problem with her jaw. He helped her. He charged her nothing. Had other friends who've come who've had different kinds of problems, taken them to the emergency room here in Umbria today, were charged nothing. That's not supposed to happen. They're supposed to charge something. But quite frankly, the people in Umbria today, when I asked them how much would this be, it's so not in the culture to pay for things as far as healthcare that they really didn't know what to do with that. So I don't want to say that's going to happen to everybody, but I haven't known of any tourist that has come into our town that had any kind of problem with healthcare. Italians are very empathetic about the healthcare situation, and quite frankly, they're horrified at the American healthcare system, that people could end up bankrupt because of healthcare. So I know that there are insurance companies out there that will offer coverage for when you're here. If it gives you peace of mind, I would say sign up.
I have some comment on that. I was in Florence with family in 2016, and my brother-in-law had a problem with kidney stones that went on for days and days. We finally took him to the emergency room in Florence. He was there for a full day, had ultrasound, finally prescriptions, saw a couple doctors. And at the end of the day, when we tried to pay, they did have him pay, but it was like 100 euros for a whole day, all the prescriptions, all the care, all the imaging. So he was getting worried about what was this going to cost. It was very reasonable. So we just didn't have a problem at all. We were very happy.
That is a very common experience. And also with prescription drugs, if you come here, I had people that showed up, then they had their prescription, but somehow they didn't have the medicine, took it to our pharmacy, and I said, well, you're going to have to pay for it. But it was minimal. It was like, 10 euros for a prescription that they figured was going to be a couple $100. So the cost differential is huge. And as a matter of fact, it's one of the things really ticks me off about America and medicine is when you realize what we pay in Italy for medication versus what everybody in the US pays. It's pretty criminal, I think. Anyway.
But if it clarifies for some people, when you are Italian, you're given, like in the US, they give you a social security. In Italian, they give you a codice fiscale, which is a way for the health system to sort of, if we can compare, build back so that the hospital, the doctor can get recognition. So if you don't have a codice fiscale, then there is no reason, no other system to give the credit, quote unquote, to the doctor, if you will. So that's why the easiest thing to do is to really not charge you. Plus, it's not a significant amount of money. But then once you get through the system and you get a codice fiscale, then you are in the system, in essence.
Right, right. And getting a codice fiscale was the least problematic of any of the paperwork we needed to get. It was very easy to do.
I have a question, if I may interject. Can I talk? I actually have codice fiscale. I'm from Abruzzo, and we're planning on moving there, hopefully in about a year. Have an apartment in Abruzzo, and but we plan on getting married in the US before we move. I'm Italian citizen, dual citizenship, and my wife to be is American. What is it best to get married here before we go, pertaining to the medical and everything else that we're discussing regarding the medical? Does it make any difference? And I don't know, that's a question, if Antimo has any information on something like that.
From my perspective, and Susan can add her life experience regarding the medical, if that's your major concern. No, it doesn't matter. You go to Italy, and whatever needs you have, hospital emergency, you'll be taken care of at either no cost or very little cost. But if there are any other reasons for becoming a citizen, then probably Susan knows even more.
Right, I totally agree. I mean, I would not let that be a gating decision point. It's hard because the mindset in the US is so tight on this, you know, and I tell Italians too who go to the US. Now, those people I counsel very much to get insurance when they go over. Because, you know, if you don't have traveler's insurance in the US, it's really problematic. It's not the same. It's not a same comparison, an equal equivalency.
Thank you. No,
Let's see, there is one question here about your episode of House Hunters. And what episode of House Hunters were you on? Where can we find it?
You know, I'm not sure if it's still on. It was in Californians in Umbria or something. It was something in Umbria. And, you know, those episodes cycle through. So for a long time, it was on. I might have, if I have a link still to it, I'll look and see and send it to Christina.
Perfect. Thank you.
It was a great episode. I really enjoyed watching it.
Yeah, it was, you know, it was a whole nother experience.
All right, so we're just at 9:08. Are we thinking we should wrap things up?
Yeah, I think we pretty well covered everything, don't you think? Or
well, there's still some questions here. I'm just thinking maybe we can have Antimo download them, and I don't know if we can follow up with some of them if they differ from some of those others that, yeah.
Okay. Oh, and I see that Carrie Melcher put in Jed's website. That is it, Italy-wise.
Okay.
Antimo, are you in Italy or are you in US?
No, I'm the odd duck Italian living in the US, opposite.
I am. Salute.
I am from Puglia and I've been here 25 years, but I'll tell you, I'm giving myself 2-3 years and I'm going back.
This is bad.
Yep.
That's gotcha. No, we as I said earlier, and thank you, Susan. You very gave us a lot of information, but we have a lot of intention of moving there to Abruzzo, that's where I'm from, it's an interesting way when people ask why you want to go, why there are so many factors that you have to consider, but there's something, and this is just a general feeling for myself and the experience that I've been there so many times, and obviously with family and speaking the language and knowing people, and there's something that draws you back there that it's hard to describe. That's all I want to say. It's very difficult to describe to somebody the feeling of when you do go, you leave and then you just want to go back again. So I just want to leave with that, with that beautiful.
Right, and I would, as a final wrap up too from me, I would totally agree with that. When people say, well, what is it, why you want to stay there? And I said, it's the lifestyle, and trying to dissect what that means. What does lifestyle mean is not easy, but that's really the truth. What I love about Italy is the life I live here.
Well, Susan, thank you. We just 1,000 thanks, grazie mille, for your presentation, for staying on and answering questions. We'll try to download what questions maybe didn't get answered and put those in our follow-up email that'll go out with the recording later to those who signed up for this presentation. Anything else? I just can't believe, that you got up at 5 o'clock in the morning to do this. So.
That was the hard part. And also Carrie Melcher again put in the episode for House Hunters. He's posted it. That is a California couple leaves careers for life in Umbria. That's the episode. It was delightful, again, and I'm very Italian, one last thing. One of the things that people talk about in life in Italy is, one of the people in Florence said to me, we love American tourists because their enthusiasm and delight with the city reminds us of why we love it here. So I think that is exactly how I feel. I love having visitors come in because it reminds me again, we see with new eyes the beauty and the culture and the people. So thank you all for having me revisit a lovely part of my life. Thank you.
And once we get the recording downloaded and cleaned up a little bit, I'll be sending out an email to everybody, a follow-up email with the resources, with the emails and Julie's thing, and the two the House Hunters and the two not websites, blogs, and so forth. So we'll have some information to follow up with. So be looking for that, in about 3 or 4 days or a week. Okay. So, thank you all for coming.
Everyone.